Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about some interesting powder horns in our collection. Powder horns historically have been considered both a decorative art and a folk art, but they are also pieces of military history. So you might be asking yourself, how were powder horns used and what's so important about them? Why do we have them anyway? Well, they generally functioned as everyday objects, also as unofficial military accoutrements, and they also served as souvenirs or conversation pieces. And almost anyone in the 18th and early 19th centuries who used a flintlock or muzzle-loading firearm would have needed a place to store his gunpowder, his black powder. And powder horns and powder flasks were the most common of these containers. And black powder was usually loaded into the firearm's muzzle end. Then a piece of shot or lead ball was wrapped in paper or cloth patch and rammed into the firearm. After that, the flash pan was primed with a small amount of finely ground powder. So this gun-making technology really advanced during the 1800s, seeing the rise of the percussion cap system and the expansive cartridge case. Now, these advances actually revolutionized gun-making, enabling firearms to use a self-contained ignition process. Now, this self-contained ignition process diminished the need for people to carry black powder separately and load their weapons with it. So during the 1800s, the use of powder horns diminished over time. However, muzzle-loading weapons were still used during the Civil War, especially during the early years, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit more specifically about these horns that are associated with the Civil War. It might be difficult to see some of the details, but I'm going to describe them. Here we have a horn that James Mayron, a South Carolinian, picked up on a field near Stark's Hill on the Antietam battlefield in Maryland in September of 1863. It has a turned neck and spout with a raised ring base plug, and there's sawtooth edging where the horn meets the neck. It's hard to see, but you can see where there are remnants of this sawtooth edging. And this indicates a skilled construction, and this is actually comparable to older American horns from the 18th and early 19th centuries. There are numerous motifs carved here on the horn. It may be hard to see some. It looks like you might have an appearance of a flag. There's also a lot of floral motifs, and it's very hard to see, but there's a line of houses there, and some of these motifs also coincide with some of these older horns. So what we think is that this is probably an older horn that was taken onto the battlefield by a soldier who was still using a muzzle-loading weapon at Antietam in 1863. So interestingly, it was a South Carolinian who picked it up and eventually donated it to our museum. And it's one of the earliest donations to our museum, appearing in the first published catalog of the collection. The next horn was believed to have been decorated by Private Gregg. It has A.D. Gregg carved onto it, if you can see it there. He served in the 21st Infantry of Company B. It also has Fredericksburg to commemorate the Battle of Fredericksburg, and this was thought to have been done around 1862, around the time of Fredericksburg. Now, this could have originally been an older horn, judging by the carved animal motifs and the crosshatch, which is a common motif found in horns of the southern backcountry. It was later decorated to commemorate a Civil War battle. So interestingly then, this horn was probably originally a functional horn, hunting horn nonetheless, and eventually became a commemorative object associated with commemorating a Civil War battle. The cultural influences of the powder horn did not die out after the use of them faded, however. Some of the popular expressions you hear today, such as lock, stock, and barrel, or flash in the pan, are associated with this older technology of muzzle-loading weapons. So the next time you hear these expressions, think about the history of these weapons and the accoutrements that were used to load them, such as powder horns. Thank you.